going on, y'all? Welcome to the first episode of the BALListic Report. We're in this episode, myself, Corey Spivey, along with my boy here.
Taylor Moore.
We're going to be previewing this Titans Week 17 matchup, and hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a full scope of what's going on. We'll look at a couple of things. What's on the line for this game? We'll recap the Week 5 game of Tennessee and Houston. We'll look at what we'll expect in this Week 17 matchup. We'll go over Titans' keys to victory in this game, and then we'll close this podcast out with some of the playoff scenarios that would happen if the Titans lose. So we'll kind of jump right into this thing, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. Um, so what's on the line for the Titans in this game, man? What are you thinking?
Man, number one's the playoffs, and it's so crazy because each year it seems like we just need to get the 9 wins to get into the playoffs, and this year we are at the 10 win mark, and we
Right.
still not guaranteed a victory.
Yeah.
So really, it's in a situation where we win and we end, and hopefully we can do that tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what I got down. Like, the first thing is that, first of all, the division is on the line. Something that we haven't done in 12 years is win the AFC South. So, I mean, we were probably little kids the last time that happened, but something like that would be no small victory. It would give the city a major boost of pride at the end of this regular season. And secondly, that thing that you were talking about is that a playoff spot is on the line. We've been able to get in the playoffs the last 2 years, but we've had some success last year with an amazing run, but the year before that, I think we made it past the Chiefs, and then I think we dropped that next game. But like we're saying, man, a playoff spot is on the line here, and we'll speak more about playoff implications later. But failing to secure that playoff spot at the end of a 10-6 season like this, with so much offensive talent, like Ryan Tannehill having a great year this year, completing 65% of his passes, 3,603 yards, 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Um, Derrick Henry, 1,777 yards. He's on his way to winning another rushing title. AJ Brown and Corey Davis, two 1,000-yard receivers who are probably going to be after this game. So not securing that playoff berth would be a major letdown. We got off to that hot start. We flamed out against the Bengals and the Steelers, but that would just be a major letdown. Not getting that playoff spot, that would just completely let the air out of this team, and that's not something that we want at all, man.
I think something also just the fact that we made it all the way to the AFC Championship last season is kind of like going to the playoffs should be expected at this point. So that's why this game is definitely important too for that too.
Yeah, it is. Like, I mean, that was a run. We weren't supposed to be there, quote unquote, but we got there. Like we said, we played with a big chip on our shoulders, and people just weren't ready for Derrick Henry. And I think coming into this season, a lot of people thought that he was going to get shut down or that he was going to fall off, and he hasn't. But the teams that have beat us have done a great job, pretty much putting guys in the box. Because just because you put guys in the box against Derrick Henry doesn't always mean that you're going to be able to get him down. But last week against Green Bay, they did an excellent job with that. And like you said, in the AFC Championship, he just couldn't get going, and Tannehill couldn't bring up the rear. And so that's what it ultimately put us out of the playoffs. So they're going to be looking to avenge that, and play with an even bigger chip on their shoulder.
All right, so next we're looking at the last meet between the Texans, which was week 5. The Titans squeaked out a victory in overtime, 42-36.
Right.
And really that was one of those games where it was like anytime you're taking on a divisional team, it doesn't matter what your record is, it's going to be a lot of tension and it's going to always go back and forth. So just looking at a couple of highlights, Sean Watson, he lit us up again, 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards. Ryan Tannehill, he had over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. But the big deciding factor was Derrick Henry, who went over the 200-yard mark, and he showed why he is the leading rusher in the league. So, that was a good game, but then again, it shouldn't have been that close. But the fact that we got the victory, that's the only thing that really matters at this point. And yeah, it was a good game, and it always and anytime the Titans play, seem like always give fans a heart attack. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know I definitely had a heart attack, watching that game. I think there came to some point, like near the end of that game, where I'm thinking it just didn't seem like they were going to pull it out at some point. But, going back and watching those highlights of this game, what I saw was like a Titans team that completely took advantage of the NFL's worst rush defense, by some standards. And we didn't know at that time how bad they were going to be, but even then they were 1-4. Bill O'Brien had just been fired. Romeo Cornell had just taken over. But Ryan Tannehill went crazy, as you were talking about, 366 yards, and he had the touchdowns, even though he did have the one interception. And Derrick Henry went over, but near the end of that first half, coming out of the second half, the offense kind of stalled out, and the defense seemed like they were kind of lost, and they could not contain Deshaun Watson, and so they started getting loose. It seemed like defensive backs didn't know where to go. And as much as we were talking about how that Houston run defense was terrible, we were already starting to see how bad our pass offense was. They couldn't get him on the ground. They couldn't contain him. He was running all over the place, extending plays. He's a hard guy to bring down. Anthony Ferguson was great in that game. I think that was the only game that he had a touchdown in. When I was watching some of the highlights, and Adam Humphries, he was a key factor, and we've been missing him ever since that dirty hit against the Bengals, and they really missed him being in that slot position. He was a guy that could really break down the middle of the field and open up things on the outside. And so since he's been gone, it's been difficult to kind of break that down. But overall, like you said, it was a good win to keep the streak alive. But with what Houston was going through, you'd like to have been able to win that more convincingly. But again, they just couldn't contain Watson, and it came down to the end. But at the end of the game, Mike Vrabel did what he was supposed to do: give Henry the ball. He saw he was gassed out, and they squeaked that win out. And at the end of the day, a win is a win, and we'll take it. We'll take it.
And the same, like you said about the Texans' rush defense being so bad, that's the same thing with the Titans' pass defense. So that's why Deshaun Watson was able to throw the ball all over the place. He threw it to Will Fuller a few times, threw it to Fields and Brandon Cook. So that's how he was able to be so effective too, because the Titans' defense, a pass defense, is not as effective as it needs to be. It's one of the worst in the leagues. Just as shown last week against Green Bay,
Man,
Aaron Rodgers just made everyone look bad on the
yeah,
defensive side,
yeah,
especially our cornerback. So just going back, to the game week 5, when you have a good quarterback who knows what he's doing,
hmm
and if the defense is not ready, it's gonna be a long day. And that's what
yeah,
happened in week 5.
yeah. Because he's been having a great year, so they're gonna have to be prepared for him. But um, playing off of that week 5 recap matchup, what are we expecting in week 17? Like, because there's a lot on the line, as we talked about earlier. So when you look at this week 17 matchup, what are you expecting out of us?
So number one, I think it's going to be another high scoring game,
Yeah.
because when you look at the teams from week 5 to now, the Texans' run defense is still one of the worst, and the Titans' pass defense is still one of the worst. So I feel like it still probably be like around a 30 to 40 point game for each side. So that's number one. It's going to be a high scoring game. I still believe the Titans is going to give the ball to Derrick Henry at least 20 to 25 times in order for the Titans to be effective in their play action. And also, I feel like the Texans are going to have a lot of trick plays, because at this point, they don't have nothing to lose. They're
Mm-hmm.
4-11, and they know that, hey, if we can knock out the Titans, then that's just one step for the Titans to be out of the playoffs.
Right.
So they really in a position where it's like, listen, let's at least end off the year with a win, and let's see if we can get the Titans out the playoffs, just like we're out the playoffs too.
Right. Yeah. I'm with you. I'm expecting Tennessee to come out and establish the run game early, establish it often, because this Houston defense is terrible. They're averaging about 151 yards a game. I think Derrick Henry is going to get close to, if not go over 200 yards again. I think that would be the longest 200-yard rushing against a team consecutive in NFL history. I think that would be 4 straight games, because
Mm-hmm.
it goes all the way back to last year. He started off, he ended getting into the playoffs, but there's got to come a time where we have to not have to beat the Texans at the end of the year to try to get in, because that is a dirty robbery. So I expect him to come in, like I said, get close to, if not over 200 yards. I think Tannehill is looking to bounce back after that terrible performance on Sunday Night Football against Green Bay. So I expect him to come out and get 275 plus yards off of the play action game. You know what I'm saying? So But on the other hand, I was sending that video before we came live. Uh, I don't know if you watched the video of JJ Watt, but he's fired up. He's mad. Like he's ticked off that they quote unquote suck and that they're not giving any type of effort. And it can go one or two ways. It can completely derail their team as like, oh man, if he's gonna just blaze us like that, well then we quit. We out of here. We're not together. But on the other hand, I think what it's gonna do is fire up the rest of the team. I think they're gonna come in high energy, looking to, like you said, knock our playoff hopes out of the water. Deshaun Watson is going to play. We wasn't sure if he was, but because of injuries and health, but he's going to play. So he's going to look to come out and play his game. He's having one of the greatest careers, the greatest seasons of his career, even at 4-11. But I think Mike Vrabel is going to have our guys ready to play. They'll go out and I think they'll get the job done ultimately.
Definitely, definitely. Now we're looking at some keys to victory.
Yeah.
It's always easier said than done, but at this point, with some of our past games, it seems like the Titans just don't stick to the script sometimes. So hopefully, with some of our keys to the victory, they're able to um, use a few of them and probably be enough to knock off the Texans. So I guess I'll start it off. Number one, Derrick Henry has to get the ball at least 20 plus times. We already talked about, Corey already mentioned that defense is run defense is one of the worst in the league. Why not attack that?
Exactly.
Number one, like I said, 20 plus carries, Derrick Henry. Number two, for our defense, let's try to get off the field on third down when Deshaun Watson has that ball in his hand. And the thing about having a mobile quarterback, he's not afraid to run that ball.
Like that.
So we have to make sure we make the field limited for him as he's on the field, so we can make sure he gets off on third down as much as possible. Because if not, he's gonna keep running the score up, and he's gonna find a wide receiver in the pass defense.
Yeah.
And lastly, we have to make Deshaun Watson uncomfortable. I know it's been tough to sack the quarterback this year, but we need to throw up some schemes that could probably throw him off his game a little bit, which may be hard to do because it's Deshaun Watson. But if we can make him a little uncomfortable, maybe get an interception, maybe cause a fumble, that can
Right.
throw off the offense and give us exactly what we need to get a W for tomorrow. What you
Definitely.
think, Corey?
Yeah, I think my keys are right along the same with you. The first key that I have: control the trenches. Like they have to win the battle at the line of scrimmage. They've got to allow Henry to get that full head of steam because if he can get some steam rolling at the line of scrimmage or before he gets there, he's a hard guy to bring down. He's about 6'4", 250 plus pounds. If he can get ahead of steam and get to that second level, like there's sometimes where he doesn't even have to break off a big run. If they can just trip him up and he can fall forward, that's easily 5-6 yards right there. You know what I'm saying? So they've got to control the trenches. They've got to play some old school football, run the ball. Like don't try to get cute. Don't try to get fancy. Stick to what we're good at. We lead the league in rushing. Uh, Punish the defenders, break their will early, and keep the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands so that can limit his effectiveness. That's what they've got to do. And I'm right along with you on my second key. I know we may be seeming like we're a bit, too hopeful, but we've got to dial up some sort of pressure. I know they have not done very good at getting to the quarterback. I think they've only got like a less than 20 sacks, if not even close to that.
Think about 15.
Yeah, like so I'm saying, like 15, it's not a lot of sacks, but if anyone can just make some attempt to make Deshaun Watson uncomfortable, throw him off his game, like you said, because the line not getting to him puts the defensive backs at odds. They can only hold for so long without defensive holdings and pass interference, and you can only run around with these guys for so long before they get open. Like you said, Deshaun Watson, he's incredible at extending the play. I think last week there was one play where Aaron Rodgers had like over 14 seconds to get the ball out of his hands, and he crossed the field two times before getting some yards. So they cannot allow it to happen. Mike Vrabel messed up at the beginning of this year by not hiring a defensive coordinator, and it's showing. This is not, the type of defense that we want to play. But they've got to get creative and generate some sort of pressure on Deshaun Watson. And lastly, most importantly, they've got to come out in this game and be aggressive. They came out against Green Bay very lethargic, very lazy on both sides of the ball. And so Mike Vrabel's got to realize this is not that 2019 DP's defense. If you win the toss, take the ball because the defense is not going down there. They're not getting any stop. on those fourth down plays where we're close to the touchdown, do not punt it off and give them good field position. I don't know what was going on. Like they weren't aggressive. And so the defense, they've struggled all year. They got to quit the arm tackling. They got to quit giving up on routes, play hard, and avoid costly penalties. Those are my keys.
Perfect. That's right on. So, what if the Titans lose? It's a lot of scenarios in which it's too confusing to go through all of them, but
Right.
that's why it's important to win and we're
Yeah.
in. But if we do lose, you have a few scenarios for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
So, okay, there's a lot of things that could happen, but here's the most likely, most important. If the Titans lose against Houston, they can still miss the playoffs. Okay. So I know we're being a little bit pessimistic here, but assuming that the Titans do lose this game, which is not totally an impossibility with the things that we just talked about, the Titans at 10-6 would only have improved one game in the last couple of years. Again, wasted some of this talent on the top guys in the NFL, and they can still miss the playoffs if Miami beats Buffalo. Now, Ryan, not Ryan, yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick,
mhm.
he's not playing in that game because of COVID protocols. So they're going to have to start Tua, who struggled over the last few weeks. They're playing in Buffalo. I think there is some snow situation going on there, so we don't know how he's going to play in that. So there is a possibility Miami could lose, but
Mhm.
also I don't think Buffalo is starting their top guys. They're going to rest a lot of their starters, so Miami could still beat Buffalo. So the Titans lose, Buffalo wins. If Baltimore beats Cincinnati and Indianapolis beats Jacksonville, the Titans could miss the playoffs. And if you look at these records and the way these teams have been playing, Cincinnati and Jacksonville, those are not teams that have been playing very well. Baltimore and Indy have been coming on hot. So all of these scenarios are very possible. And if they happen, the Titans miss the playoffs. So just like you said, the Titans have to go out there and win this game. Like, they missed their opportunity last week to clinch the playoffs. There's no resting guys. You got to come out and play this game because your playoff life could very well be on the line if those three scenarios come alive.
Yeah, and like the thing is that like I really want Miami to pull out the victory, but at the same time, with the Bills, if they do win, then they, at the same time, then that could mean that they have like a better seed in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it's still something for the Buffalo Bills to get out of it if they were to get the victory. Which
Right.
is definitely possible as they're sitting Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
With the Ravens, I see the Ravens knocking out the Bengals easily.
Yeah.
With the Colts, I see them knocking out the Jaguars, even though they already have the number one pick.
Yeah.
But really just to save from going through all this confusion and just looking at the scenarios, Titans just
Yeah.
need to win and we're in.
Let's go
But
out and win that game.
I got one more question for you though.
Yep.
So if the Titans were to lose the game and we do miss out on the playoffs, who would you blame the most for? Would you blame, let's say, the coach? Would you blame the GM? Um, or maybe a like specific player. So who would you kind of
Hmm.
blame it towards?
That's a tough one. And I'm going to tell you why. I think my two choices for blame would have to fall on John Robinson and Mike Vrabel for these reasons. John Robinson missed on every single player in the offseason. Every single player. Every player they drafted is either not playing, has not contributed, or has contributed very little. Christian Fulton barely played. Isaiah Wilson hasn't played a single game, and we don't even think he's going to play a game. Darrington Evans just got back. Jadavian Clowney gone off injury. Vic Beasley gone and was playing good with the Raiders. So he missed completely. And that first pick against with Isaiah Wilson, that was a terrible pick in my eyes because they needed defense. They needed some way to dial up the pressure. And then secondly, I'm gonna hand it back off to you with Mike Vrabel chooses not to replace Dean Pease. And I think that's showing because he's got too much on his plate and they're not getting any sort of pressure. The defense looks lost. They keep using words like miscommunication. Kevin Byard has not played good. They're missing guys. So I will put blame on either one of those guys.
Yeah, and same here basically because at the same time, like the GM and the coach, they're supposed to work hand on hand on the
Hmm.
players that they bring in as well as the coach they may bring in.
Right.
I think they missed out a lot by not bringing in some type of defensive coordinator just to ease off some of the workload on Mike Vrabel as he coaches, so he can just focus more on just being a coach, a head coach for the team.
Yeah.
And secondly, just the fact that and now like it's easier saying it now, but just the fact that we didn't re-sign Jarrell Casey
Yeah.
as well as Logan Ryan,
Yeah.
and like it's easier saying it now, but back then, it was easy to say, okay, let him go. But now looking back on it, it's like, man, like these people were captains of the defense.
Hmm.
They knew the defense already ahead of time, and they were already read, and they were already well like people in the locker room.
Yeah.
So looking at it now, it's like, man, maybe we should have just paid Logan Ryan. Maybe
Right.
we should have just took on the big contract of Jarrell Casey. And now it kind of like it backfired, but just looking at when it first happened, the moves that they played made in the beginning of the season look really good, bringing in Vic Beasley and
Yeah.
and Javion Clowney, but it just didn't work out, But the fact that we made it to the AFC Championship, like you said, Corey, that hey, we weren't even supposed to be there, but the fact we made it there, making it to the playoffs, that should be guaranteed each year now because we made it that far. And just the fact that, like you said, some of the moves we made during the draft, it wasn't the best because our defense was the obvious area that we needed to address, and we didn't do that with the first pick. So, yeah, definitely looking at the GM and also the head coach collectively because I feel like they're still trying to keep some of the Patriot way because they both had ties from New England, and I feel like you have to change some of that, and also like some of the players that we have brought in, like our kicker, we brought in Steven Gakowski. Like he
Hmm.
missed a lot of key kicks early in the season. It cost us a few games, So looking back at that now, it's like, man, like we brought in a former Patriot player, you know, and also just looking at when we did sign him, it looked like it was a good pickup,
Yeah.
But as the season went on, it was like, man, he's not coming through. And just the fact that he was signed and he was a former New England player and it just
Yeah.
has ties to the coach and the GM, it's kind of shaky when you look at it that way.
Yeah. And not only that, but Ryan Suckup, he ended up in Tampa Bay, and he's having a pretty good year. So that's another player you can add to the list for John Robinson of players that they missed out on totally. So I don't know. They've got to. They missed the playoffs this year, and then going into next season, they don't recoup. They don't hire a defensive coordinator. They don't get any better, and they have another average season. There's going to be some people questioning John Robinson and Mike Vrabel's jobs. So I don't know.
Definitely, definitely. And that's the tough thing about it because especially when you make it that far, and then just the fact that our offense is like top five in the league. So
Exactly.
how do you have an offense top five in the league? Your defense is at the bottom of the pack, and you missing the defensive coach, and you're still scraping to get into the playoffs. It should be that way, So like I want the Titans to make it, but if they don't make the playoffs, that may be a wake up call for the entire
Mhm.
players, for the coaching staff, and for the GM. So I hate to say it'll be a good thing, but it'll definitely make them look at what they did this season and make adjustments so it won't happen again.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Well, I think we've gone through everything that we were checking off the list here. At the end of the day, I tell you what. Before we close it out, what was your score prediction for the game?
I'm gonna say 28-24 Titans.
Okay,
28-24 Titans.
I got you.
What about you?
Yeah, I expect the Titans to come in and score a lot of points. And my score was 41-20 Titans.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, 41-20. I think they pull it out pretty convincingly.
It's the afternoon game tomorrow too. They play
Yeah.
3:25 p.m. instead of the noon game, so that may be a little different. But at the same time, it's still playing inside a dome. So
Mhm. In Houston. That's right. Well, hopefully next time we get on here, we'll be discussing the Titans playoff scenarios and moving forward. We appreciate you all who will watch this video once it goes viral. If you will, follow us on Instagram at the Ballistic Report. The Ballistic Report on Instagram.
All right, y'all. See y'all later.
All right, see y'all.